Welcome to Living from the Inside Out with Holly Wade. Living from the Inside Out is about living fully, guided from your inside. Holly shares the wisdom of how your mind, body, and spirit are truly connected and that you deep down know your own answers. Holly and her guests will provide tips, practices, and inspirational stories to help you approach your life from your own heart. And here's Holly.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining this week's episode of Living from the Inside Out. I am your host, Holly Wade, and today I'm super excited to bring on a guest, Stephanie Smart. And I'm just going to let Stephanie talk about what she does, and we're just going to roll with this conversation. We already kind of have this natural vibe, so I'm excited to see what happens in this conversation. Stephanie, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This is fabulous.
I'm stoked that you're here. I'm stoked that we connected.
Yes.
And what's really funny is we do very similar work. And you had me at the word sing and dance. Let me tell you, honestly. But tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how you got into this. Because we all have a story. There's something that led us to our work.
Yeah, we do all have a story, and that's the fun part of it. I am a soul song minister, and I am a coach for authentic true speakers. So I help people reconnect to who they are at their core, and then bring that out. And I talk about that as our soul song, and sort of how I got into it. I have about 30 years experience in the alternative medicine field, studying a variety of things. I have multiple degrees, and I also felt like every time I got with clients, and the ones that made the most progress were the ones that not only we dealt with the physical and energetic components, but they really reconnected to who they were as a person, and they did the work to integrate that into their life. And so as I was transitioning from being a stay-home parent back into working, I realized that I didn't want to go back to a brick and mortar office, that I really wanted to expand and get back into that core of coaching and mentoring people, because that's what lights me up. I have a story where I talk about, I was a corporate trainer for Kinko's at one point, and I had had a whole state of Michigan that I was responsible for, and I was sitting in my office, getting yelled at by my boss, and the phone's out here, and I not even sure what he was yelling at me about at this point, but I hear a voice, and that voice asks me, if today were the last day you have on this planet, would you be happy with the legacy that you left? Mm-hmm. And I immediately said no. There was no doubt that the answer was no. And I knew that I needed to go back to teaching. I love training people, but I needed to be doing it more in the holistic field. And I needed to bring back that component that made my heart sing. And so that was sort of the journey into being full-time at this stuff.
That's that's so relatable. How many people, I've been, my area that I really just kind of geek out on is mind-body connection, but the element of stress and tension, because that's telling us something.
Our bodies are miraculous.
Exactly. And that's where I start. That's where I go into it. But in my research and in gathering my information and my facts and what's going on, one of the top stressors for people, one of the top two, one is finances, not a big surprise, and the other one is work. And
not a big surprise there either, right?
No. And I think, my goodness, we spend at least a third of our lives in our workplace. Mm-hmm. And whatever happens at work, of course, impacts your home life. So wouldn't it make sense that if you're miserable at work, and I know why people stay. I mean, we all know why people stay. But is it worth it?
Right.
Is it worth your health? Is it worth your relationships? Is it worth your marriage? Is it worth those things?
You start to, and at some point, right, it becomes not worth it. Or you make a choice. Yeah. And that's what I talk about with everybody, that everything we do is a choice, right? You talk about that with your clients too. Yeah. Everything is a choice. And so do you want to make a choice along a path that has you dancing with joy? Or do you want to make a choice along the path that's just, I'm just getting by? I'm being that pinball in the pinball machine. And what I want to do is I want people to know that they do have a choice. Yeah. And then to help them make that shift, because so many of us are that pinball in the pinball machine, just getting buffeted around instead of choosing the path that we want.
Yeah.
And I don't care if it's a corporate path. I don't care if it's a path as an entrepreneur. I don't care if it's a path as a stay-home parent. Choose what you want and let's make it so that you thrive. Because, I'm also a recovering alcoholic and drug addict, and I have about 30 years of sobriety. And in my low times, there was, a lot of things that happened. And I knew in those moments that I wasn't meant to be doing what I was doing, but I didn't know that I had a choice. And I want people to know that we have choices.
Absolutely. And I think
you were going to say something. Yeah.
Sometimes people understand that they have a choice, but it's like, okay, I made that choice. Now what? Mm-hmm. And that's where coaches really are helpful in helping you to do different, because all you know is what you've always done.
Right. And that's key also in looking for a coach. And I preach this, I rant about this. We are so many people will go to a personal development workshop or read a book or, participate in something, but you have to then take that and integrate it into your life.
Yes.
And when you're looking for a coach, that needs to be integral. You need to see that they're helping you do that. And if they're not the right coach for you.
Right. Amen, sister. I'm saying yes.
You have to take action. And I talk about it again and again and again. It's about action, right? That's where the dancing part comes.
You keep bringing it. And
I do. So
I love that, because I'm a
yes,
always have been. And that's why when you use that word, when we were initially connecting, I was like, oh, she's my person.
Yeah.
we have a connection. She doesn't even know this yet.
It's good.
I've always been a dancer. And I
nice.
didn't have formal training. I just danced from within. And I just had this ability to connect to music and to use it to express. And if I had a bad day, I'd stomp it out and hip hop it out. And then eventually I found salsa dancing, which is totally my addiction now. It really is. It's kind of scary. Like I get a little bit and I need a lot more. But it's so much stinking fun. So this idea of dance and your, dancing with joy and dancing with your soul and all this, tell us about it. Tell us about how you got to that, and tell us about that.
It sort of happened as I was putting together my book. So I have a process where I walk people through a creation of a soul song map, which is like a vision board for your soul. We deep dive into your passions and your dreams and your gifts and your core values and find the big themes. And we come up with about 10 to 15 words. And those words are your non-negotiables. So I have a couple of kids, and they will have special needs. And when my 9-year-old was 1, we found out he had cerebral palsy, and we got told he probably wouldn't walk. He probably wouldn't talk. And I just, my world turned upside down. And it's in that moment, what are the things that have to be happening? And I had already been doing this work, but that really snapped into place for me right then. And he became my project, right? And so you wouldn't know today that he has anything if you didn't have that practiced eye. You would see it because of what you do, but most people wouldn't see it. But it's in that moment of your world just turned upside down. What are those non-negotiables? And those are the things that are the callings of our soul. Those are the things that are the notes of our soul. And I talk about that as our DNA. And that soul DNA is like the twin dragons coming up. And they're intertwining together. And those are the DNA of your soul, those notes. And that's where we get the dancing. Because I want our cellular structures to be dancing, not just our whole body. Yes. I want our whole very cells to be dancing. And so I called my book Soul Song Dancing, because it's really about finding those non-negotiables and then integrating them in your life so that you are dancing. It doesn't have to be a physical dance. It's that joy of just expansiveness of I am on my path. Yeah. And this is what I want to be doing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I talk about, it's funny because I talk about, what I often ask, how would it feel if every cell in your body was dancing? Or what kind of
Right.
what kind of dance party is happening in your body right now? You know, I because that connects to me, and that hit me a while back when I was salsa dancing and on a regular basis, and it was just my place of peace and joy. And I knew that I was vibrating, like my body was just always on this wavelength of being joyful would be the great word, because it doesn't mean that everything was always okay, but I was always okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I talk to people about, I talk about joy a lot, and that we need to have joy and our life needs to be filled with it. That doesn't mean that there's not a full range of emotions.
Yeah.
It means that sometime during your day, there needs to be moments of joy.
Yes.
Because otherwise, why are we here?
Exactly.
Like, why? I really got that, when I was 18 and 19 and I tried to commit suicide, and why am I here? I should not still be alive given what I chose to do. So why? I have to believe that we are not here just to exist, that we are not just here to be that pinball in the pinball machine going back and forth. We have to thrive. Otherwise, why?
Yeah.
And so let's find what that is for you, what makes your soul dance, and let's make that happen in your life.
I have chills, like the good kind. This is one of those conversations. I wish we were in the same room.
I know, it would be great. We should make that happen sometime.
That would be fun. We could just talk for hours, I'm sure. It's striking me is that, in your discovery of all of this, your life has not been easy. You've been thrown a lot of challenges. And yes, some of those were based from choices. And some of it just was life. And that's the dance of life.
Mm-hmm.
Life
Absolutely.
is going to throw things at us sometimes that we have no control over how that came into our life. But we do have control, like you were saying, over choosing to find joy, choosing to find our path in the midst of that challenge.
How we respond.
Yeah.
Really? It's, are we proactive or are we reactionary? And having those built-in mechanisms, already knowing what my path is, what's that foundation that's me, allows me to not be knocked completely out when something happens. So my another a good example of this is I have my soul song map. I know what the integral pieces are that have to be happening in my life, and then I have, so my 9-year-old is at this point 5, so I now have a 5-year-old and a 9-year-old, and because now I have a 9 and a 13-year-old. So when my older son was 9, he got a very serious concussion. And there's nothing like not being in the room when it was happening and hearing the cry. And then it took 2 years of me intensely working with him to get him back to functional. So he is a profoundly gifted mathematician, and he couldn't add numbers in his head. So the rug was pulled out from under me, right? He's curled up in a fetal position in a chair. How do I respond to that? And then how do I teach him?
Yeah.
Right? So this goes back to what we were talking about before we started recording. It's like, yes, it's how do we then be that role model? How do we bring our soul song, and as coaches and mentors and parents, right? How do we make our life our teaching and expand that? And so not only, it was about him. I spent 2 years homeschooling him, and it was absolutely all about him and getting him back to functional. But at the same time, it was about me, right? He also needed to go with me when I needed to go to Aikido. He went with me on the back of my bike. I have a big cargo bike. He rode on the back of my bike. I made him go to the store with me. So, we did all those things that was also about me. And it's about when those paths weave together that we then allow the expansiveness to happen. And if I had not had my soul song map, if I had not known what those core integral pieces of me were, I would not have responded as well to that situation. And because I did, I knew, okay, I have to get outside on my bike. I have to take us to the park because that's for me. And then, right, I teach him how to become aware of that. Just like we were talking earlier, right? I teach him how to know that discernment. What does it feel like in him? Yeah. And that's how we model that.
Mm. So here's a question that's popping up in my head, because you have this very rich background and breadth of experience as a result. So how was it that you started to integrate this into your own life? How did that start for you, just to have that little seed to go, huh? And we have a while, so
yeah, so
you have at it, because this is really fascinating me. Because
yeah, go ahead.
You aren't just talking this, you live it, and that is what's important to me. And I think that's, where you're saying find a coach where who's going to help you integrate it. The thing that I always ask is that coach living it?
Right.
Because they haven't integrated it if they're not living it. That is not who you want.
Yeah.
And you clearly integrate this. You radiate it.
I have to. I would not be here functioning if I didn't. So I always grew up. I grew up always seeing sort of shadows and talking to the mermaids and the dragons. And I grew up in Santa Barbara, California, so there was water and all of that. And hence my business name is the Dragon Mystic. I engage with all of those things. I bring that energy in. And when I was 21-ish, 22-ish, growing up, I never knew that there was anybody like me. I never knew that anybody else had any of these experiences. And after I got clean and sober, I stumbled into a class, and this woman, and I don't even remember what the title of the class was. I couldn't tell you her name, right? None of those things. But in the course of this class, she said, go across the street to the park and put your back against the tree and have a conversation with it. And I was like, oh my God, I found my people. And it just opened the doorway for me that I wasn't alone. Mm. And that started down that path of studying a variety of different shamanism and earth practices. And then I was in a car accident, and I was on disability and wasn't getting better, and I wasn't getting better. And somebody said, you should go see this person who practices orthobionomy. And I was like, okay, what is that, right? But I said, okay. And this is the key, right? I said yes. Mm. So I picked up the phone and I called her, and she had just gotten through telling her husband she was not taking new clients. She was not going to have anybody else come and stay at their house. There was no. She was 8 months pregnant. No. So I picked up the phone, I called her, and she said yes. And she hung up the phone, was like, what just happened? And I started living with them, and I started studying orthobionomy, and I got better. And she is, to this day, my dearest friend in the world. Yeah. She's my colleague, she's my friend, she's many things. And so, it's like when we listen, when we're open to those things, and that was the beginning, so orthobionomy is a form of work, and you should know this. Orthobionomy is a form of work that comes from osteopathy and the Eastern philosophy of energy. And so we work with the structure and we work with the energy. We work with the blending. We work with where comfort is and ease is. So the principles are about finding comfort, finding ease, remembering who you are, being the practitioner is a facilitator, a catalyst, right? All those things that you do in your work. And we have a very structured format for doing it that also allows for a lot of play. And I got better as a result of it. And I then became a practitioner and an instructor, and I've studied that work for over 30 years now. Mm-hmm. And it's integral to who I am. And I would at this point say that it's part of my spiritual practice. Yeah. And so that, that just started us down that road. Mm-hmm. And it never stopped from there. So, I studied that. I studied Reiki. I have a master's in Oriental medicine. And so it just all comes together, and it weaves into this abundance that I offer to people. Because when you're curious, then it just keeps growing. I'm sitting here going, yeah, check. Yeah. Check. How do I? Yeah. Because
I just love to learn. And you
Right.
sound like you're the same way. And when you have this curiosity about this vessel that you get to live in, it's unending.
It is, it's like when I start to go down that path and you're like, well, what happens when this muscle does that? And then you engage with it from that perspective. And what if we embody the actual cellular tissue right there and then move from there? Yeah.
And what's funny is I'm geeking out as you're saying this because I'm like, oh yes, sister. And people think it's the weirdest thing because they don't, but you can really tune in. Like I was doing this last night because I can always feel when my spine is out. I can always feel when there's a tweak. And I just laid down on the floor. I was tired. I'd been working, cleaning up my grandma's house and doing some work on that. She passed. And so, doing all that. And my back was just sore after. And I thought, I can tell I'm out. So I just laid down and I have this ability to tune in to the root or the very beginning of where it's kinked, for lack of a better word. And I'll just let that part relax and I'll start to feel things untwist and unwind and unkink. And it can take some time, to just allow it to move. But I tell you what, this morning, everything was so much better. My hip wasn't caught and all that. So yes, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. And
so teaching people how to do that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because
where's your
all
comfort?
have that ability. We've just never been taught that we had access to it.
Right. And we all have it.
Yeah.
And so starting small, right?
Yeah.
What does it feel like when you do something that brings you joy? What does it feel like when you do something that doesn't? Yeah. Or they'll have an experience. You'd be like, well, how did that feel and where was it in you? Because every time we identify one of those things, we build a reference point for the future. And then those reference points just build on each other. And then we have this abundance of resources within ourselves. And then we can like get hit by that truck and go, oh, I know how to do this. Let's go.
Not that we wish that on anybody.
No, right. No.
Yeah.
But you know how to respond, right? You know how to take care of yourself. You know how to respond. You know what comfort feels like. You know how to proceed. And you've identified what those core ingredients are in you, what your soul sign is. So you're all set.
Yeah. So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
What brings you joy? What are those things for you?
Being in the water. I growing up in Southern California, being in the water, being out in nature, and being with my family.
Nice.
Those are my top three.
Nice. And do you try to do? Obviously, you try to do those every day. Maybe not all three, but at least one.
Yes. We have some great parks, so I'll go hiking, swimming. There's the indoor pool at this point, so. We vacation. We spend the summer in New Hampshire in woods and on a lake. So I get my fix and I just hold that. So we're there for 5 or 6 weeks every year.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely. And I'm kind of going all over the place in this conversation, but not really, but yeah.
No, not really.
You had referred back to, it's when you say yes. It's when you say yes. And I love that you made it that simple. Because we, as humans, I think we tend to overcomplicate we overcomplicate our own life.
Right.
And we get scared. And so we will use every excuse to talk ourselves out of something. And so when you initially said yes, did you feel uncomfortable? Like, oh my goodness, what did I just do? Like after you thought about it and you're like, oh my goodness, what did I just do?
In that moment, I didn't, because I was pretty desperate. And so the yes gave me hope.
So this leads to another question, because I've been here too. And what I can say for myself is that when I hit that point of desperation, there was no other answer. And I think that is a gift that the universe will give us, is to allow us to go to that space of desperation. We always have the opportunity to say yes. But when we go, okay, yes, then the universe can take over and kind of swoop us back up onto our feet so that we can go, okay.
Yes, right. Yes, because when we hit that bottom, saying yes is the yes to life.
Yeah.
It's the yes to not only spiritual but physical life in some ways, right? But what I want is and this goes back to what you were saying a minute ago. It's like I think people don't say yes as much, not because they're afraid or because they're scared, but because they don't know what happens next.
Yes. And that's the fear. That's what I refer to as the fear. That it's the fear of the unknown.
It's the unknown. But I'm not,
what it boils down to.
Mm-hmm. But I'm not sure I want to attach fear to the word, to the action.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Because sometimes I'm just like, I need one of these, but I don't know which.
Yeah.
And so I don't know which one to say yes to. Or I know that I'm really uncomfortable where I am, but I don't know what the clarity is for the path forward. Yeah. And that goes back to what we were talking about action. And that it's having that, where's the clarity, and then taking the action onto the path. And that's where having a support group or a mentor or a coach really helps, because you don't feel like you're headed down this path of unknown without some help. Yeah. Because I think so many more of us would have these like thriving, beautiful lives and be full of our choices if we knew how to say yes. And that saying yes just meant a simple, oh, now I'm just going to take this next step. Mm-hmm. Right? It's not, yes, now I'm going to bang down the door, right? It's just, now I'm going to take the next step. Yeah. It's like when I was teaching my son to walk, and I would stand beside him holding, I'm going to scoot over. I'd stand beside him holding, and I would just be like, we take the next step, one foot in front of the other. And that's all we do. Yeah. It's one foot in front of the other.
And a series of yeses string together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And not making a big deal out of it.
Yeah.
Right? We don't give the energy to that fear. We give the energy to, I'm taking the next step. I'm taking the steps towards alignment.
Yeah.
And we discharge that piece and allow the expansiveness to happen.
And I think that's it's a muscle that we build. Mm-hmm. It's like the first time you say yes, it's kind of like, okay. And then the next one is like, okay again.
Yep.
But pretty soon you're like, okay, this is getting easier. And if there's a quote misstep in there, you know how to get back on track.
Right.
You're not afraid of making the wrong step.
Right.
Because it's like, I'll just try it, and it's all going to be okay regardless.
Right. And nothing's a straight line.
No, right? Not at all.
Everything's a spiral. And so we spiral back around, and sometimes we're like, what didn't I already do this? Right. But we did only in one way, right? We're coming to it from a whole lot of more experience that's going to get to it at a different level. And we come back around, like the path is not a straightforward path. Yeah. It's like I'm doing an event in September. Sorry, the sun is coming in through my curtains here. I'm doing a full day event in September, and I hired an event planner because I just want to do the content. I couldn't do all of it. And I told her, I said, go have fun and incorporate spirals.
Yes.
Because everything is about that circular path that is not straight. Even when we take one foot in front of the other, we just proceed and know that it's all in the right way. There's an expansiveness to the transformation that occurs.
I was picking up on fun, and that was the next word I was going to ask you about. Because, like, how do you encourage people to bring play and fun into their life?
Well, you did call for this now. I don't know. So this is my Dragon Mystic crown. So I pull it out wherever.
We all have to have something.
Yeah. It's about bringing in whatever, right? And some of that is building your reference points. What is fun for you? Yeah. Because fun for you is going to be different than fun for me.
Absolutely.
And so what does that mean for you? And I make people make a list. I talk about journaling a lot, right? That's where we get those recurring themes. And then we start to discern, when I do this activity, that was fun.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe next time it'll be fun too.
Yeah.
And we try it again.
Yeah.
It's like when I first started going to therapy when I was in my 20s, and the therapist holds up that wonderful, 8x11 sheet with all the emojis of the faces and the feelings. And I'm like, I have no idea what any of those things are.
Yeah.
Right? We experience them. We learn what they feel like in our body. We put an experience together with something that felt like it. And then, we have a label.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Great way to put it. So
Fun.
exactly. Which is the key. That is the key.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think, you just said we need to come to a place of thriving. And if we aren't here to enjoy this life that we get, we're missing the point.
Yeah. And when I work with people who are wellness practitioners or business owners, then I tell them your business has to nourish you as much as you nourish your clients, because you need to be having fun.
Yeah.
You need to be having laughter and joy and wake up and feel like, yes, I get to go do this today. Yeah. And have that just, this is so good.
Yeah. I love it.
Our whole life should be like that.
I agree. I agree. And we need to surround ourselves with people that bring that out, that allow us to have fun, that allow us to relax and be ourselves. Relaxation that's a word that I use a lot because people don't know how to do it. Mm-hmm. And when we're at ease, that's when the joy comes. That's when the fun comes. That's when the ideas and the creativity flows. It's not when we're in the space of go, do, mm-hmm. monkey mind.
Right. And we all have those moments.
Right. We do. Right? Because life is coming at us.
Yeah. I'm putting together this huge event and I'm like, okay. Yeah. And I make sure that during the course of the day, I offset that with, okay, I'm going to go have this cup of tea. I'm going to go walk my dog in the woods.
Right. And I allow myself, when I know I've got a big event where I need my energy to be full on, I give myself permission. When it's done, I take time, mm-hmm. several days, no work, mm-hmm. just to regather myself, because yes. I'm giving everything to that.
Mm-hmm. It just takes a lot of energy and a lot of attention, especially with what we do. There's a lot of paying attention to all the different pieces that are floating around in there. And so it's tiring.
Yeah. And it's important that for us, to mm-hmm. make sure that we're giving our full self in the whole thing.
Yes, absolutely.
That's just hardwired. I can tell that's in both of us. It's just hardwired in. I want to make this big. I don't know what I want them to feel. I just want them to feel that, yes, I'm here. Mm-hmm. This is what I needed to
feel like they're coming home.
Yes. There it is. There it is. Yeah. Because they are. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They are. Stephanie, it has been a delight. Where can people find you? And where can
I'm on
your book?
My book is Soul Song Dancing, and it is a workbook that will guide you through the process of making a soul song map. And everything is on my website, which is thedragonmystic.com. I also am on Facebook as The Dragon Mystic, and I run a Facebook group called Authentic True Speakers, because I really want us to all be embodied as those who are looking at our truths and how do we make that happen in the world. And so we talk about that. And in the group, I post today's truth. So I talk about a quote and sort of how does that portray into our lives. So I'm pretty active in there as well.
I love it. And all of that information will be in the show notes for anyone who, if you're listening, sometimes we need to go back and go, wait, where was that? So it'll be in the show notes for those of you listening. If you're like, I didn't catch that. And Stephanie, it's been a delight to spend time with you. Thank you so much for sharing your work, soul dancing. I love it. I love it. I love it. And how to find our own soul song. Mm-hmm. Because I really resonate with how you described that. And I'm so thrilled that we connected.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me. This has been great. And I'm glad that we made a connection as well.
Yeah. For those of you joining, I hope that you'll share this with other friends or colleagues or whoever that you think can benefit from Stephanie and hearing her message. And join us again next week, Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern. Have a great rest of your evening. Thanks for joining Living from the Inside Out.
Thank you for joining us at Living from the Inside Out. Listen every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. To connect with Holly, just go to www.globalvoiceradio.com. Global Voice Radio is where your voice and your message is heard.